Welcome back to another podcast of John and Alain talking about things going on in our worlds and things we think might be of interest to you. And Alain, I actually just we were talking in the green room before we jumped on here, and one of the things I was sharing is that after about a year hiatus, I've just gotten back into coaching, and in this respect, coaching young athletes. So I'm coaching my son's baseball team, and man, it's just put a light under me. I'm just so happy to go to the field and work with them. And it's not that we're very good, because we're not, but it's just been so cool. And Alain, I know you with the boys have coached their football, their hockey, and stuff like that. So what was interesting as we started talking, even in the green room, was about the parallels between what we're doing with these young athletes to what we do in business. And
Yeah.
my wife actually even said it the other day. She's like, how come all these kids that come down to first base just have big wicked grins on their face? And I had to stop and reflect on that. But I'm just making it fun for them. I'm making it
That's right.
easy for them to have a good time while trying to teach them. But we're only 2 weeks into the season. I know every one of their names.
Yep.
I know what they like. I've taken the time early on to get to know these kids a little bit.
That's right.
And dawns on me that that's not so different from what we do in the business world, or maybe should be doing in the business world, to get the most out of our people. So it's been really cool to see it through the lens of, in this case, 10 and 11-year-olds. But
Absolutely.
the principles aren't different, and we're making a difference. And these coaches are all, or kids are all, coming to me at the start of practice, Coach John, at the start of games, and they're asking me questions now and stuff like that. So it's just been a really cool sort of incubator to real life application of what we do. And so I'm curious, are you having similar experiences, or am I kind of out on my own island on this one?
No, you're bang on, John. And it's funny whether I'm meeting with a client or whether I'm up in front of a group facilitating a session. Very, very rarely does something not click in my mind that is some kind of parallel to my coaching experience outside of the professional world. Because, again, we've talked about this. You mentioned it right off the bat. Coaching is a passion of mine. When I'm not working, I'm coaching baseball, hockey, football, whatever it may be. And the parallels are really, they're striking. It's really, really interesting. So many of, the fundamentals, the things that kind of drive a team, whether it's a U14 rec league flag football team or whether it's the customer service team at organization XYZ. And similarly, when talking about those parallels, it's kind of that approach as well, and the shift that we've seen over realistically over the past few decades as far as kind of how coaches lead, whether in the professional setting or whether in that athletic setting. And that shift from, and I'm someone who grew up playing hockey, grew up playing football, so I'm very, very familiar and well versed with that kind of older kind of command and control, shout and scream, kind of lead almost by fear strategy, if you will, which, to be perfectly honest, I don't think ever got the best out of me and a good number of my teammates as well. However, some of that, where it has transitioned into more of the, kind of that relationship based leading, where, as a leader or as a coach, you're building relationships, you're showing that you care, you're building trust with your athletes. These same things are really what I believe you're seeing in some of the most successful businesses and successful teams out there in the professional world as well.
So I'm so curious because I know that, you know, well, it's been a while now, but you just came off a really successful season with the high school team that you coach. And that's a tough group. You know,
Absolutely.
lots of emotions and things going on with these kids at this point in time. But you know, if you had to kind of pinpoint what you think you do really well to get the most out of them, what would you attribute it to?
John, I think if I had to, really highlight one thing, I think it's the fact that I care. I care about, our collective goals, our collective vision, what we want to accomplish as a group. But even more importantly, I care about the young men and women that I coach as individuals.
Mhm.
Whether it's, you know, asking how the weekend was or checking in on their family situations or even just little things like, going out of my way to make sure that anytime that I see an athlete or I'm talking to an athlete, I'm using their name. And it's the same thing when I'm in a classroom, when I'm facilitating a session. As I go around the room, I'm not pointing to someone and saying, "Hey, you." I'm memorizing those names and I'm using that name. I'm making a
Yeah.
point to do that. And not just, and I think this applies to professional setting, but also the athletic setting as well, is, I'm not just connecting with those so-called high performers. And on a team in whatever sport, you've got individuals who, contribute to a certain level and other ones that have more of a specialized role, if you will. And for me, it's really important that I make those connections and that I show that I care, with all of those individuals, right? Again, not
Yes.
just, those rock stars, those high
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
performers in the work environment. And the other thing is it's genuine. I genuinely care about these individuals. It's important to me that I show them that, and it's important to me that I know that, and I think that is something that you can take into that business world as a leader, and you can achieve some pretty significant results.
Nice. It reminds me of a couple things I just wrote down or jotted down while you were talking. One is this notion. I don't think would be any different for you at the high school level as it might be for me at the younger levels. But for some of these kids, that's the best part of their day.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, you know, don't we owe them a bit of a service to help make it the best part of their day? But I think there's a parallel there to work. You know,
Absolutely.
a lot of people, yeah, you know what? I have to make a paycheck. I have to be able to provide for my family. But if we as leaders aren't making it a place they want to go to, through showing them we care, through showing them that they're valued and that they're a person and an individual, um, man, that's got to suck for them. And
That's right.
so that piece is big. And the second thing is it reminded me of a podcast I listened to recently. It was an ex Navy SEAL who's now doing leadership in the civilian world, if you will, where we operate. And the moderator asked him, he was like, you know, what are the keys to a highly functioning Navy SEAL group? Because they are most
Absolutely.
often. And he said it's easy. He said the best Navy SEAL groups have four things. But it was the reciprocating nature of it that really got me. So he said, we trust each other. I trust them to make good decisions. They trust me to make good decisions. We don't question each other, and we just know that we're doing it for each other. We care about each other. At the root of it, that's what triggered me when you started talking about what's made you successful. Like we care about each other. We know that we are relying on each other in that case for their lives, but they truly care about each other and know what they're giving up to be there with each other. But it's also reciprocal. I need
Yeah.
you to care about me and I care about you. We need to know that about each other. So
Yep.
was the trust piece. It's reciprocal. The third one, also reciprocal, was the respect piece. We
Yeah.
need to respect each other. And the moderator actually said, ideally we'd like each other, but he knows that that's not real world. And I tend to agree is we don't like
Absolutely.
everybody equally. But I love the way you said it doesn't matter if it's the high performing athlete or the specialist athlete or just the person who's trying to get some exercise or sense of community. We owe it that they get the same amount of respect as
Yeah.
everybody else. And I think that that was a big thing. The last one is probably the one that impacted me the most from a business perspective is listen, as leaders, we are constantly trying to influence people to get them to do things, to get them to do things well. And what this guy said is we also need to be open to being influenced by others.
That's
And
right.
that one just kind of rocked me to the core is that, I think a lot of leaders, yeah, we want them to do it for us. We're not so willing to let them influence us to do things differently. And he said it's kind of all four of those things that really work together. And I think I don't I'm a pretty modest guy, but I think I do that pretty well with these kids. That
Yep.
and I would add one of our core values is I make it fun for them. So
That's
we're
right.
having fun. We're learning about each other. We're learning the game, and we're respecting each other. And man, it's just been an eye opener for me that maybe we ought to be doing a little bit more about that at work. So curious your thoughts
Absolutely.
on that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. When I'm thinking about all four of those items you just mentioned, the trust, respect, the care, the influence, and I think what you said that is really key is that reciprocal piece. Again, when I think of my players, the same thing as when I've led teams in the professional world, I trust them to do their job, provided I've provided the resources and all the tools that they need, and vice versa. They trust me to have their back, to support them, to make decisions with them in mind. So I think that kind of two-way street, that reciprocity piece is huge. The other thing that kind of popped to mind as well when you're talking, John, and specifically as it relates to the idea of respect, and certainly respect for a leader and having the respect of your teams is, I it's that being able to kind of walk the walk piece.
Mm.
It's that kind of leading by example. It's kind of that old, it's kind of coach speak, but I think it applies in both arenas, if you will. It's that not asking my team members to do anything that I
Mm.
wouldn't
Right,
be
right.
willing to do.
Yeah, I love that. And as you would know in our training, we actually spend time differentiating between trust and respect. And
Yes.
I think you nailed it the way you introduced it is that we often respect what people do. So they get things done on time, they follow through, they do what they say what they do, they walk the walk and talk the talk. All of that is respect. And absolutely that leads to trust. Would never doubt that. What we get to people to think about differently when it comes to this trust is, I get them to think about the person you trust the most in this world.
Yes.
For you it might be Steph, for me it might be Leanne, or our best friends. But what about them? Why do we trust them so much? And what we realize in the response is goes way beyond how we show up. It's who we are as a person.
Yes.
And that's what we trust in our spouses and our best friend. It's certainly a function of time. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But they don't judge us. We don't judge them. All of these things. And I guess one of the things I hear often, and I want you to let me know if again, this is just some of the people I'm dealing with is, I don't feel like we have that trust to that point where there's no judgment, there's no you suck or you're no good or anything like that. It's all about, hey, we didn't win this one. What do we need to do to get the next one? And
That's
I
right.
know you can do it. but I could also give you a hard truth when you don't show up the way you do it. And I hear an awful lot of leaders who are blaming
Yeah.
their people and not maybe looking inside and going, well, what did I do here? What do I need to own here? How could I have made this better or different
Yeah.
for these folks? And so I'm curious, do you kind of feel or hear the same things or different?
Yeah. No, I absolutely hear the same things. I think it's interesting because in my experience, the best leaders that I've ever been around, whether they were coaches in an athletic environment or whether they were leaders in a professional environment, uh, have that ability to kind of look inward first, and have that ability to be able to say whether it's coach in front of the press conference saying, you know what, it starts with me. Yeah, the product wasn't to the level we had hoped it would be tonight, or that project didn't hit the targets we had intended for it to hit. It starts with me as the leader. And again, I think that that kind of cascades down into, again, that trust, that respect, that influence. And another word that kind of comes to mind as well, John, as we're talking about this, and you talk about trust, and you talk about the people who we trust the most, whether it's our spouses, our good friends, our family, whomever it may be. I think something that's kind of interesting within there is kind of the idea of vulnerability.
Cool.
Uh, and being able to allow yourself to be vulnerable, and seeing that vulnerability in others. I think that, that is huge, again, as it relates to kind of building that trust.
Puts as I always say, it puts credits in the bank, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting is I'm sitting here as you're talking, thinking about a completely different word, but I think the different word, the reason we go this way is because we're not willing to get vulnerable, and it's
Yes.
ego or self-image. Those are the
Awesome.
two things that are on my mind of, when I've seen my best leaders and I've seen the worst leaders were not willing to get vulnerable because it might impact their self-image or burst their ego a bit. And so what do? They double down actually and blame others instead of taking it on the chin and saying, this is me. I didn't set the right parameters for success here, and I own this. And whether that's on the sports field or uh, in the workplace, it doesn't really change all
Yeah.
that much. And you're really kind of where this is leading me is to think somewhat validating that our program is built the right way, that we talk about really getting to know and understand people first. Who
Absolutely.
are they?
Yeah.
And how do I need to communicate to them to get the most out of them? And then
and
we
and
go
who
down
are
this.
we?
Yeah, absolutely. And why might we be in conflict? Not because you're doing anything wrong or I'm doing anything wrong, but just because we're not communicating properly with each other. Then we go to that emotional intelligence, which we talked a lot about here already. I'm not going to go down that path much, but it all leads to the role of the leader, and what we focus on there is trust, respect, psychological safety, and relationship. And kind of a weird way we got here, but starting with the kids, but that's what we're doing with those kids is building an environment that's allowing them to bring their best self. And I just think that we have an opportunity to do that in the workplace as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it, John. And as always, if anyone wants to learn a little bit more about what we're talking about here today, or just reach out to have a conversation, see if there's any way that we can help you out in your world, by all means, please visit us at www.fairwindstraining.com, or hit myself or John up at our first names at fairwinds.com. You can get us by email. We'd love to connect with you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alain. Fun as always. Have a great day, everybody.